So yesterday, Nate decided to basically break the internet. Well, really revealed a lot of information around Nintendo's plans for the next, we'll say almost 12 months, maybe more, with different releases. And this got people talking in all kinds of ways about this. Some people are very, very excited about what's coming up, myself included. Actually, I'm looking at the list of titles that are right now kind of floated out there for the rest of 2026. And I think it actually looks very, very good. But then also some of 2027 even being put together that looks pretty strong as well. But what I want to do is go over some of the big pillar releases that were at least discussed here today. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new. Now, if you want to check out Nate's his full thoughts, he did spend a lot of time discussing things around the Nintendo Direct, the format maybe Nintendo will be going with here in the near term, which not necessarily going to be Nintendo Directs, but more so sometimes we'll talk about how they have their social media or Twitter or X Directs where they just for the span of a week, maybe they'll throw out announcements each day or every other day or something. And then you get to the end of the week and you go, oh, wow, there were 4 announcements here that were actually pretty decent. It was kind of their social media direct. Sounds like that might be the strategy here, at least over the next few months. All right. Like we're not expecting a direct now, according to Nate, until June. So that typical E3, well, E3 not E3 time now. I guess falling in line more with Summer Games Fest at this point. But with that in mind, Nintendo still seems to have plans to start revealing some games. One in particular, and it's kind of a shame. It's funny. I know Nate recorded this before the big Star Fox reveal for the Mario Galaxy movie that'll be in theaters next week. And now there's a lot of people who are really, really interested in it, really excited. Like, oh wow, okay, Fox McCloud is going to be in this big new Mario movie. What exactly does that mean? Maybe for the future of Star Fox, but also what other surprises are in the movie if they decided to reveal that Fox was in this Mario Galaxy movie ahead of time? Obviously, it's a big bump of interest as it's now north of 30 million views, by the way, that one tweet that they put out there on X for their social media account. And then you tack on all the other interactions that were happening with that tweet. So it's massive right now around Star Fox. Good timing then, you assume, for a new game, as that was the first thing that went off of my mind when I saw this. I'm like, oh wow, okay, not only is Fox in the movie, they're doing like a prominent, almost like a push, putting Fox front and center here. Then you find out, okay, Glenn Powell is going to be voicing this character. That's not something, I assume that's not a voice you would go get if you don't have maybe even future plans for the Star Fox franchise. Well, come to find out, according to Nate, there is indeed a Star Fox game that is coming. In fact, we're going to find out about it soon. It's saying the announcement is in April, and yeah, April is a few days away. Now, I don't think it's going to be announced the week that the movie comes out. Like as soon as April hits, they're going to probably a few weeks into April, I would figure, and then the game apparently is coming out over the summer. So it's going to be one of those situations where we get the announcement, the reveal, and then, oh yeah, it's out in like 3 months. All right. So let's say they announce it in April. We could see maybe a July release for this, August, somewhere in there. I almost wonder if this would be kind of like take that DK Bonanza slot, that mid-July release. And that's exciting stuff. Star Fox, for a while, the franchise it's not really, I guess, not been on ice because we have still seen Nintendo reference it in different ways, whether it's Star Fox 2 randomly coming back for the release with the Super Nintendo Classic or putting it onto NSO, or like we've seen it for the Wii U, and that was Star Fox Zero was a whole thing. I know it didn't necessarily go over the best, but Star Fox isn't a franchise that was completely forgotten about, and it's been like 20 something years since we've seen a new one. For a while there, it was actually a pretty big focus for Nintendo. It's just kind of fallen by the wayside, and that's one of the reasons it's so exciting, because there should be a lot of potential around this franchise, not just for games, but also outside of games, whether it's merchandise, apparently movie cameos, or even entire parts of the movie. I feel like its own series. I think a series for Star Fox would make a lot more sense than a movie, because the Mario movie itself went very, very fast. They were like scene to scene to scene to scene to scene. It was very quick. So I wouldn't mind there being like an 8-episode series that Nintendo shops around, and it's a way for them to really dive into some of the lore and the different characters and relationships within the Star Fox universe. That would be awesome. Provided, of course, they pull it off there. As for this game, though, coming out over the summer, I'm expecting them to just drop the announcement on their social media accounts just like that, trailer, the whole thing. And according to Nate, the visuals are good, awesome. Online multiplayer sounds great. And then he mentions classic style, which in my mind thinks, okay, well, on rails, Star Fox, the standard as we've known it to be, other than things like Star Fox Adventures and a little bit like Star Fox Assault, where you would go down to the surface of a planet and there'd be on foot sections or land masters. I think there's room for that, and that would actually be a pretty cool almost twist on the gameplay. If so, Nintendo says that the way it's explained, they have a gameplay concept and they have a game around that gameplay concept. And looking at the Switch 2, it has faster storage. I think it'd be really cool if they figured out a way for you to go from space to ground to space seamlessly. Kind of like how we see No Man's Sky, but much, much smaller. Like that, I think they have one or two planets that they really focus in on, and you spend time on the surface as Fox or Falco, whoever, and then you also spend time in space, and whatever you do in either part of the world or the universe affects the other. And that to me opens up a world of classic gameplay, but also some of that almost 3D action adventure style that we had with Star Fox Adventures, but that was not a Star Fox game. It ended up becoming a Star Fox game. So that's something I would like to see, but I'm also not going to turn down the idea of Star Fox making a return with its classic style. That would just be awesome. So yeah, I'm very excited. Really looking forward to the idea of a new Star Fox game happening in a few months now. So we'll look out for the announcement of that one. And then going further into summer, Fire Emblem, Fortune's Weave. I mean, it's Fire Emblem. I would assume it's going to pull people into the Switch 2 ecosystem because it's just going to be a Switch 2 game. And you have people who are big-time fans of Fire Emblem, and I'm sure who have been waiting for when the next big release would happen. And, oh, yeah, it's a Switch 2 game. So I think they already have their audience that's kind of ingrained for Fire Emblem, and that will move a fair amount of Switch 2 systems, but again, mostly around that, to me, that dedicated fan base for the series. Still, though, I would assume a strong release. I think that would be a game that's well received and should be a pretty good lineup with Star Fox and then Fire Emblem for like the two big summer releases. And then you get later 2026 the Dusk Bloods. This is one that I am so curious about, and it's been quiet. It's been quiet, from FromSoft and Nintendo, and there's a lot of questions around this game and how they're going to, I think, approach the build up to it. Like, will there be a network test? At least one, maybe two of them. What other aspects are with this game with the multiplayer centric side? Can you still play completely single player if you want? I think the idea of this Switch 2 specific FromSoft game that people were wondering if it was a Bloodborne game when they were first showing it. So it has that aesthetic that obviously catches people's attention, especially if they like FromSoft games. And I, for the most part, do. I mean, I really enjoyed Elden Ring. So I don't know if it's going to be another Elden Ring level, but if it's even close to that, it's like, okay, there's another big release, and that one has potential to pull in all kinds of people who probably weren't even thinking about buying a Switch 2. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, the new FromSoft game is only on the Switch 2. Well, I guess I better get a Switch 2. But the last two games were clearly the big ones here. I know Star Fox is big, obviously, but it's hard to argue with Zelda and Mario. Those are like two staples for the mainstream Nintendo fan, will say. And by the way, as I mentioned, there are some that are a little unhappy almost, it seems, with this lineup. I'm not sure how that's possible when the big grand reveal, the finale here, I would assume for the year, like a holiday game for Nintendo, is the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time remake that might have a decent enough push, but like an actual budget behind it. And I say actual budget because we had the Ocarina of Time remake on the 3DS. It was still developed with the 3DS hardware in mind, so it wasn't like, oh, this is going to have to be blown up to a 4K 65-inch display, whereas this one would for the Switch 2. And I'm just thinking about this being the most powerful hardware that the Zelda team or whoever Nintendo is having recreate this game, the most powerful hardware at their disposal here. I think this could look really, really impressive. I think it could be an awesome like again, new iteration of Ocarina of Time. I'm curious how far they push this thing. Is it going to be 1-to-1, or are they going to go back and change some things up here and there? I just, man, it's for a lot of people, it's the greatest game ever made. Right. So it's hard to argue with the idea of Nintendo going back, remaking it, not for, again, a handheld like the 3DS, but a handheld like the Switch 2. Also docked though. So I think this could be a really, really cool release. And it's a way to get people excited again about Zelda. I mean, look, people are excited about Zelda because Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, good games. I'm such a fan of the traditional Zelda format. And yes, I've played through Ocarina of Time multiple times, but to see it again in like all new light, who knows? Again, maybe some new content added in. There's a lot of possibilities here for Ocarina of Time remake, but I'm not gonna push back or complain about the idea of, like, again, the highest rated game of all time being remade here and released for the Switch 2 as the holiday title. Just, that's going to be a lot of fun, to go through. And that seems like those would be like their or their four pillar games: Star Fox, Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave, The Dusk Bloods, and then Ocarina of Time remake. Now, there were a few other ones sprinkled in there that Nate was mentioning, which I'll leave that up to him to tell you about in his podcast, so go check it out. But he did touch on the 3D Mario game. And this is this is funny because the idea of it making 2026 has been floated for a while, and I do think it made sense for it to be there. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be the case. Now, the expectation, I guess, at one point was that it would come out in 2026, but you can't really say it got delayed when it was never announced. But you could revise the release window, we'll say, internally, and it seems like they're like, no, you know what, it's going to be in 2027. Now, this does make 2027, I think, pretty strong immediately, because you go, okay, they have Gen 10 Pokemon, Wind and Waves, and then you also have a new 3D Mario. So immediately, two big-time releases set up for the Switch 2. And then, of course, Nintendo, I'm sure, will have some other games pile in there. But 2026 being pretty strong right now for Nintendo, just based on what we're seeing here. And then 2027, I think Gen 10 Pokemon, by the way, people are thinking holiday 27. I'm kind of thinking that's first half of 27. So it could be a few months even after Ocarina of Time remake comes out. Oh yeah, here comes Gen 10 Pokemon, and then we're off and running for 2027. There is one curveball that I want to point out for 2026, okay? And it's just, it feels like a real moonshot here to say this, but you never know with Grand Theft Auto 6. And this is something that's been going around right now. The idea of, wait, could Grand Theft Auto 6 actually be coming to the Switch 2 on release in November? And I do think it's possible. It's just, man, that would be the last second reveal of last second reveals. It would actually kind of be like Star Fox right now for the Mario movie. Out of nowhere, boom, Switch 2 logo. Because, again, we haven't really seen much else about Grand Theft Auto 6 since that last trailer, which feels like now was an eternity ago. So maybe, because then it's like, okay, Nintendo's 2026 is really set up to move units. Now, we still need to see if they'll end up raising prices at some point, because that's just kind of how the market's trending. So maybe we get to the end of the year with a $500 Switch 2. But the interesting thing about that is you'd have the Switch 2 and the Xbox Series as the two cheapest ways to get into Grand Theft Auto 6, and just based on the way that Xbox has been going with their current image in the marketplace, it seems like you might go, you know what, I guess the Switch 2 makes sense, because, hey, look, there's the Dusk Bloods and Ocarina of Time remake, and I can play GTA 6. So I don't know if this is something that's going to happen, but man, it would hit pretty hard. But let me know what you guys think about this down below in the comments, specifically the current lineup that's being floated here, and how you feel about it right now. Let's just say, GTA 6 aside, Star Fox, Fire Emblem, The Dusk Bloods, Zelda Ocarina of Time remake. Is that a good lineup for you with the Switch 2 for the rest of this year? Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.